Welcome to today's GNCC Espresso webinar, focused on the latest marketing tips and trends to boost your brand awareness and profits, powered by Niagara College. How do you build a business brand that stands out, is memorable, and builds trust with your audience so that your business is the preferred choice? To give us some of the answers, we are pleased to be joined by two experts today, likely no strangers to anyone on this webinar, to take a closer look at the strategies that can make a difference to your organization. It is my pleasure to introduce to you ALLIE Hughes. ALLIE's leadership has taken Hughes&Co to market significance since its founding in 2012. Her industry reputation has led to speaking engagements across North America, including Inbound, the ALLIE, Haste and Hustle, and more. With a client base that ranges from small business to Fortune 500 companies, she has assembled a dynamic team positioned to win, and ALLIE has been recognized within this community and outside of Niagara for her excellence and her commitment to business, with a Niagara Excellence in Business Award, as the Niagara Entrepreneur of the Year, Women in Business Emerging Entrepreneur, the Niagara Top 40 Under 40, and Brock University's Most Outstanding Young Alumni. ALLIE currently serves as the president of the Brock University Alumni Association and is the incoming chair for the YMCA of Niagara. ALLIE, it's wonderful to have you with us, and congratulations on your 10th anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Wonderful. And our second expert is PAULA REILE. She is the research program manager overseeing the business and commercialization solution portfolio in the research and innovation division at Niagara College. In this role, she guides a team offering real-world solutions to small and medium-sized enterprises in areas such as market research, go-to-market strategies, marketing plans, and promotional plans, working with businesses from startup stage to fully commercialized businesses. PAULA, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks so much.
And to everyone in attendance, my name is Mishka Balsam, and I will be your moderator for the next hour. Our hope is that this will be a very interactive session. Many of you have provided us with some of the questions in advance, and we're more than committed to getting to all of them. I'm making the assumption that everyone on this call and this webinar is a pro when it comes to Zoom, but just a quick reminder, you will see on the right-hand side, or maybe at the bottom of your screen, the symbol of a hand. By clicking that, we know that you would want to ask a question live, and we will unmute you. So please watch for it, and we'd love to hear from you, any comments or input and any questions. And the second option that's available to you is the option of the chat function. It's a field where you can type in your question. We can see it on our end, and we're committed to getting to those questions, all the questions coming in. And for those of you who wish to enable live transcript, please refer to the bottom of your Zoom screen for that option. And lastly, to everyone here today, today's session is recorded, will be made available to you directly via an email following this webinar, but it will also be available on our website at gncc.ca. I think this is it for my introductory remarks. And with that, we're going to open up this conversation that I'm so very much have been looking forward to. I'm going to start with the past couple of years and what the market has experienced. And the question that we are being asked regularly, the questions that we see many of our members and business are asking: how has consumer attitudes, behaviors, and purchasing habits been impacted by the past few years? So maybe let's ask that question overall. Has it been impacted or not? Have you seen changes that you haven't noticed in beforehand? And what are your thoughts on that? Because answers to that will be critically important and very helpful to our listeners that are here. And maybe PAULA, if I start out with you on that question, and then ALLIE, I can turn it over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes is prior to the pandemic, there was, we believed e-commerce was going to rise, and the pandemic made that adoption increased quite quickly. So the rise of e-commerce, I think, was greater than what anyone saw. And then another big pillar is sustainability being brought to the forefront of people's mind, and sustainability in business as a strategy. I think a lot of people don't understand what sustainability means. That could be how you get your products to customers. It could be the types of packaging you use. There's lots of ways to look at sustainability, but adding that as a pillar to a business, I think, is a big thing that changed over the past few years.
Yeah, I appreciate that actually. And I think you're right. I think that line has changed, fully agree with that. And but it's a very interesting point that you're bringing forward when it comes to sustainability. Thank you very much, Paula. ALLIE, your take on it.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Paula noted here. Certainly, the consumer habits changed rapidly and unexpectedly when the pandemic hit. So we saw this massive shift to digital business. We saw businesses be in a position to have to reposition their entire operating models in a moment's notice. It was like the NBA shut down and suddenly we all do business completely differently. So certainly there was a huge change in the way that consumption happened in general. Consumption of goods, the way we got our groceries was different. It changed tenfold. But that change was not entirely consistent. So now we're seeing that the market is returned and people are hungry for interaction. So where e-commerce took an incredible incline, we're now seeing that e-commerce is taking a bit of a dive. And so those businesses that thought they built forever sustainable e-commerce pipelines are noticing that the reliable revenue that they thought was that low effort, consistent churn is actually high effort revenue in the post-COVID world, if we can call it that yet. So I think the consumer behavior there is still changing. Certainly also in terms of what became really important in messaging portfolios. So Paula noted sustainability became really important. We're also noticing that there's a higher expectation of EDI or DEI, whichever order you put those in. Every organization seems to be different, but including those priorities and things like communications internal to organizations and now external to organizations. Certainly our expectation of what representation looks like in things like marketing imagery and messaging has changed tenfold. It has been a wild time to be in the communications business. So certainly trends changed with COVID, but this I think the speed at which things changed just created a new pace for how we're expected to react to the market moving forward. So I think change is faster now than it's ever been.
Yeah, and we hear the same from businesses because it doesn't only relate to marketing, it relates to every aspect of their business, and the speed at which changes is something that businesses have never seen in beforehand. Now, it makes it difficult for businesses. And so when they're looking at it, saying like, we went all digital, we connected with them, we've invested a lot in it. Now, ALLIE, I think you're right. I think people are really eager. And I think this summer showed it, especially Niagara. It showed how much we wanted to connect with people. We wanted to see people. We even noticed it at our own events that we held, which are normally that help us in a certain time frame. And we found people were staying longer afterwards, only because they wished to connect, they wished to see people, they wanted to extend that in-person conversation that they had. But this leaves me then with the question, what marketing strategies will make companies more resilient in the future when they now have all these different facets that they have to deal with? And maybe, ALLIE, if I pass this on to you and go from here.
Well, I think there's things to consider when we look at what marketing is going to work. I think the biggest thing we've noticed, and I'm fresh back from having attended Inbound in Boston, where sort of trends that we were seeing on our side were validated in a larger arena. And one of the things that I think is a big challenge is this concept of connection. So we sort of take for granted this notion of connectivity because we're in this very connected world, but then we as individuals are less connected than we've ever been. And so that interactivity, that emotional response to marketing is what people are really hungry for. And the challenge, I suppose, is that in the marketing world, that's the hardest thing to manufacture, authentic connection with a consumer. So in terms of what tactics and strategies I think are working, I think moving back to that more sort of like bootstrapped grassroots vibe in terms of the types of messaging and collateral that we're producing is making a difference. Accessibility of leadership teams. So having the owner be on camera talking about something in an authentic way, what it means to them, how it feels, that's certainly helping. One thing that I think happened during the pandemic to a lot of organizations was platform fatigue. So because we were digital, everyone felt like they had to be everywhere and on everything. And the result of that was sort of a not very genuine experience on anything. So I think doubling down on the platforms that work best for you, and the platforms that work best for you are the ones where you think you can perform best. So even if you think your audience is only on Facebook, I promise you they're not. They're on many platforms. So the space where you thrive in terms of your content production is where you should be doubling down. So yeah, I think a return to that really authentic messaging and accessibility of the individuals in the building, or not in the building, I suppose now, is where a lot of our recommendations are coming from right now.
And it actually makes sense when we take a look at the dialogue that is taking place on a bigger stage, to actually look at it and saying, like, this is really what we're longing for, and this is what we're focused on more than ever beforehand. And maybe even then, therefore, that circle becomes a little bit smaller, but more authentic and more aligned with our values that we have. Paula, I'm going to go over to you with a question, and that has come forward and was provided to us, specifically looking at the technology advancements and the changing consumer habits that you see emerging. How can an organization respond? Or maybe if you can even start out by outlining some of the advancements that you have noticed that you haven't seen them beforehand, and how do we best prepare businesses for them?
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much technology, but I think one of the main advancements, and this goes across kind of any business, is with us being so tied to digital devices, is the way we research anything we purchase, whether that be a service or a product. We spend a lot more time researching, which means we need to pay attention to our reviews and the community we've built, and what they're giving back to us online, because that's going to support our future sales. And that really is across any type of business. And kind of what ALLIE alluded to with the marketing strategies, this is part of the community building as a brand now. And I think that's what's really important here, is every brand needs to look at building a community that's with their customers across their verticals, but also their horizontals. And I think that creates a really positive atmosphere online and will give you a positive presence. And with so many people looking to those things and taking longer to make those purchasing decisions, gathering information, that's really key.
Paula, you're making an excellent point, actually, because I think you're right. We are researching extensively more than what we would have done beforehand. And I'm giving you a personal example. I have recently looked into dogs. Well, I've always had a love for dogs, but I recently have looked at maybe possibly bringing a new one into our life. The amount of hours that I have spent online researching about different breeds, different behaviors, different things along that has been extensive. I'm actually almost like, if I would count the hours of it, it would be extensive. When you write that research and that first impression that you get by looking at the options that you have does actually drive many of the decisions that you're making. It's an excellent point. We have one question from one of our participants today. And the question is, in terms of percentage, how much of brand awareness do you feel is online, like social media, websites, etc., versus in person or any other way? And I think this is an interesting question, because we are talking about brand and what is the percentage? And maybe I think it's partially also asked to saying, where do they need to put their efforts in moving forward? And Paula, if you want to take that question, then I'll pass it back to ALLIE.
Yeah, I don't have an exact percentage that I did research on, but I would say it's significant. It's probably more than half of your brand awareness. it's going to be unique for each brand. And I think that's what can make some of these conversations difficult, is we want to try to give broad strategies. But the reality is your digital presence is the cost of doing business now. So it is very important to be online. As far as which platforms, again, that is very tailored to each business. What I think is very important is the concept of omni-channel marketing, which means no matter what channels you are, you're communicating the same messaging, the same value, and you're making everything integrate together well. I think that is what's key when it comes to the digital presence.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to a valid point. I think it's a sense of consistency, that if I talk with you, if I could interact with you, if I do business with you, it's no different, and it's mirrored in all of my transactions that I have. ALLIE, to the questions on how much brand awareness takes place, or do we feel from our online channels versus in person or versus any other way? What are your thoughts on it?
I would agree with Paula. I would say that more than half of your brand awareness is going to be founded in the digital space. But it is very custom to the business, and it's custom to, you know, the kind of customer acquisition strategy you have, and how are you most comfortable interfacing with people. I think that there's, we call it a marketing ecosystem. So what Paula referred to as omni-channel marketing, we like to think of it as like this bubble of everything that happens for your brand happens sort of within this existing ecosystem. And when you strategize and say, okay, we're going to create brand awareness, and we've created these KPIs or key performance indicators that are going to mark our progress on establishing this brand presence, we always do assign a certain component of that to in person. So being available in your community does matter, and it matters if your community is like your immediate community. So a lot of people, I think like, oh, my community is Niagara, so like I have to be present in Niagara. Some of my community is Niagara, but some of my community is not Niagara. So I have to get on airplanes and go be present in other places as well, in order to ensure that I'm being present in my community. And that's part of our marketing strategy at the agency. So it's thinking about, we talk about figuring out your channels. We treat in person as a channel the same way that we treat like having an e-commerce store or having an Instagram strategy. We treat in-person events or interfacing in the same way.
You know what, ALLIE, I think you're bringing up an excellent point too. Why we regularly at the Chamber host ministers and bringing the expertise into the business communities interested always to connect with them. We once brought the Federal Minister of Small Business down, and I always remember her remarks at the time where she said, set up your business not like an individual, like small business, just serving your community, your network that you have, but almost set it up as an international business, a national business most definitely, an international one would be even preferred. And by looking at that, saying like, don't only focus on your own market, there's a lot of opportunity outside of the region, outside of the province, outside of the country, and to really take advantage of those ones. And I think it's critical to our success. And I think this conversation also leads perfectly into another question that has come forward. We are asking business to make decisions rapidly to effectively adapt to the changes in the market and in the economy. But at the same time, they're saying, what are some of the key questions that they need to ask themselves to ensure that on the one side, they're responsive to what they see in the marketplace, but also not put the organization at risk? Because I think there's so many trends we often see, we follow them, and we put all of our people power that we have behind it, all of our resources that we have, and that trend is over in about 2 or 3 months. And it possibly has put our organization at a significant risk. And most definitely we have not seen the rewards that we want to see. Paula, what are your suggestions? What are some of the things that businesses need to ask themselves as they want to be responsive on the one side, yet also be resilient in the long term?
Yeah, I think this comes down to knowing the core strategy of your business. You need to know who you are. You need to know who your customers are. You need to really understand those two things. And when you build that into your core strategy, as various trends are coming your way, you can assess them against your strategy. Does this make sense for us as a brand? And does this make sense for our customers? And if the answer is no, then that trend just doesn't make sense for you. So it's being very confident in what your brand is, who you serve, and what value you provide. And when you have those pieces down, it makes it easier to make decisions when they're coming your way.
That makes sense. ALLIE, key questions someone has to ask themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paula covered it. That's really the advice that I would give a client, is weigh this against what the overarching goal is, and if it makes sense for you, then let's double down, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't, and it's okay. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to be everywhere. The organizations that try usually don't do a very good job of any of it. So focusing on what really works for you, and you know, what feels good. Sometimes the trends are really fun and stuff. It's fun to run, and it's exciting, and it gets, you know, a marketing department's blood pumping, and there's a lot of value in that sometimes. So sometimes it's fun, but you don't have to do it every time, and it's also not a healthy way to run an organization to constantly be reacting to a market trend instead of, you know, staying the course on a strong, well thought out strategy.
Now, there's another aspect and a couple of questions that have come forward, and that's regarding public relations. And I think it's a critical part. We have many businesses, when we talk to them, they have really interesting stories to tell. Do you have, what importance does public relations play? How important and critical is it to the success of a communication plan? And if that's the case, how can people pitch a good story that needs to get out there? ALLIE, if you want to take that and then pass it to Paula.
Critical. It's critical. I don't do it. So at my agency, we have partnerships with a couple of public relation firms we love, and we encourage all of our clients to invest well in public relations. The value of doing that is A, it gets your business in front of a lot of people quickly. B, there's already a trust factor associated with the mode of communication that you've chosen. And also it creates credibility and shareable content that's a lot less effort for you. Public relations, in my mind, is what makes e-commerce sing right now. It's what's building expertise in service-based businesses. We love public relations. I highly, highly recommend it. And I think you need to go to a specialist. I have a marketing agency. We do not do PR. We subcontract PR to a couple of incredibly talented firms that we love to work with. And I think knowing that it's a great idea to go to an expert with an incredible Rolodex is the strength in PR. It's a tough thing to do well on your own. It's certainly almost impossible to get super favorable national coverage if you try and DIY that work. That is a place where I would say invest in expertise.
ALLIE, on that particular point, is there an ROI, return on investment, that a business can look at when it comes to PR? Is there a criteria maybe that's worthwhile considering?
Yeah, definitely. There's always basic trend tracking. So take your baseline traffic, measure that over the past 6 months, draw averages, and then see how your website performs or your social channels perform in terms of baselines. An increase that is helpful. If you can include links into the articles, there's this whole link tracking system called UTM codes. I would apply UTM codes to the URLs so that you can see exactly where your traffic's coming from, which segment of your PR strategy produced what. Often we're not running a PR strategy in a vacuum. So we have digital ads running at the same time. It's often because our client is like at a large scale event, or they're launching a product, or you already have the mechanics of some sort of large scale campaign running. So tying in some trackability to the PR element of that campaign is pretty simple. So yeah, yes, there's certainly ways to track it. Sometimes just getting featured results in this big boost of sales. So that's pretty obvious tracking as well. There's lots of results that we can look at. Depends on the type of business and what it is that their objective is.
Paula, on that note, can I ask, is there any bad PR? that's there. It's there. Ones that maybe we now put businesses that maybe have stayed away from it. They're saying, I have a great story, but I'm really afraid to hand it over and to give it to someone else to tell the story. Are there risks to PR?
I think if you're supporting controlling the story and getting your message out, I think there is such thing as bad PR. Often that's not you controlling the story. So I think that comes down to your business practices and having a pulse on your external environment to help support your PR strategy. But as long as you're the one working with, ALLIE said, like an agency and supporting your story and your message getting out there, I think you're going to mostly be on the side of positive.
That makes sense. And do you, Paula, also see the importance of public relations?
Yeah, I think if we can tie it back to a few things we already talked about, and that is your credibility, right? And people doing information searches on your product or service, it's going to support that initiative as well. And it also supports in building community. When you're putting especially the story of your business and your brand out, you're supporting building that community and you're building that connection with your customer, right? On a deeper level. And that is really important in today's marketplace.
I think, Paula, you're touching on something interesting. And this is another question that one of our participants has asked. What determines the media market radius that business needs to focus on? We're talking about our consumers. We're talking about maybe getting international stories out. And not just when it comes to public relations, but also when we take a look at it from a marketing point of view. I might think that my market is Niagara. That is my focus. But is it truly, what is the radius that individuals need to look at, business need to look at? And I would also imagine that out of that, it will determine their media buy at the same time.
I think the first thing you have to determine is your distribution. Where can you sell your products or services? You know, people that often come to us with social media, I'll say, you know, it's great if you got, 4,000 likes from someone in Alberta, but if your product can't make it beyond the borders of Ontario, it's not supporting the end goal of your business, right? So you need to understand your distribution network first. Where can someone make a physical purchase of your product or service? That's where you're going to start, and that's where your media buy is going to need to be. And then the second important piece, and we'll come back to this a lot today, I think, is your target market. You really need to understand your consumer. You need to understand their buying behavior, their psychographics, and tailor everything to them and where they are. So that's not just radius as far as geographics, but it's also that helps you determine which platforms you're using. Where is your media buys going? Where are you going to put your messages to get them in front of that consumer? And you have to have that deep understanding of your consumer.
Excellent. And I see ALLIE wanting to jump in, if I'm getting the cues right. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna, what Paula noted about target market, I think is really critical. One of the things that we hear from people often is, my product's good for everyone. And if you're not already a household name, going after everyone is very expensive. That's how businesses fail. So we suggest often that, and I mean, it depends on a lot of things, but trade specific, if you're going international, is kind of the only way to go, because you're never going to hit every national paper if you think that you want global distribution of your message. So going trade specific is often really helpful and a much more cost feasible way of doing that. And typically when you're buying or when you're doing PR and you want to go trade specific, you can buy data from the trade organizations that will help you guide the way that you are advertising to those markets. So they'll send you a lot of the demographic and behavioral information that you need in order to tee up an ad strategy that's going to do anything for you, and then retarget. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say in terms of trade is a really great way to break borders down, going trade specific.
Let me follow up, and I think it's aligned with some of the questions that are coming in as well. One of them is to both ALLIE, you and Paula, your point about target audience. The question is, how do we determine our target audience? If I would look at my organization, I would say this is our target audience. It's through my eyes. and the way I look at it, but I see limitations if I only look at it through my eyes or through that of our members or that of our team only. So how does a business effectively establish what their target audience is? And that's the first part of the question. And then the second one had to do with KPIs again, but I'll get to that in a second. ALLIE, how do we determine, how does a business effectively determine this is my target audience? Maybe even
a lot of work,
this
Mishka,
time.
a lot of work. I think that there's a lot of value in who you think you want to be doing business with. I think really understanding who you think you're going to serve is like a really great first step. And then I think digging into the data that tells you exactly who you are doing business with now, who is the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, like who do you want to do business with, who would be ideal, who is it that when you know that you've made it, and then comparing that against data to support your thinking, and building out really behavior-centric personas from there. Demographic points definitely matter. They are sort of like the baseline of creating a target persona now, but in terms of actually actioning something in the digital space, almost everything that's valuable and going to generate results for you is going to be behavior centric. So it's no longer enough to know that they're between the ages of 45 and 55. They might have 2 kids. They like golfing. They probably make $150,000. They have good benefits package. Like that stuff is not enough anymore. Now we need to know, how are they spending their time? What kind of digital interfaces are interesting to them? Are they watching TV? Do they see commercials? Do they read the paper? Is it on an iPad? Are they using Apple News? Like that kind of behavioral information is what drives super effective marketing now. So the target persona exercises of the past, really helpful in creating those initial thoughts. But we need to dig deeper now. And there's organizations that can help you. So even like in our own backyard, there's tons of like data-centric people, organizations that will feed you information on the Niagara market specifically. We have the Niagara Workforce Planning Board. You've got Innovate Niagara. You've got BioLink at Brock. Is it called BrockLink? I wanted to say BioLink, but I think that's wrong. So anyways, there's all kinds of places that you can go to that can help feed you a lot of this information. Once you have those base points, then there's awesome digital resources. You can just Google like building a buyer persona, behavioral data, and all kinds of different companies, lots of startups are tracking that information. I feel like maybe, is it Cattle has a lot of consumer behavior information as well. I think that they're still at Innovate maybe, but there's lots of businesses around here and organizations that can help you do that. But it's a lot of work. I won't sugarcoat that for you. It's better to know that going in, so you do a really good job of it and you get your money back out of those hours you put in.
Yeah, it makes sense. Paula, what's your take on it?
Yeah, it can be quite a complex process, and you're looking at things from multiple angles. So as ALLIE mentioned, you can start with your baseline of demographics. I think everything she went through to really understanding the behaviors is important. And then it's retargeting. Once you establish that market, then you start to figure things out a little more, and you can look at who's actually purchasing from you and start to establish from there. Another great way to get started with your target market is actually to look at your competitors and who they're targeting, because that can be a really great base point for you. If they're your competitor, often you're targeting the same type of person. So you can begin there, and usually on their websites, when you're pulling their imagery, the type of language they're using, that will start to tell you who they're targeting, and that can be a really great starting point. And it's always important to know what your competitors are doing anyway.
Now you're part of Niagara College, and what are some in your department or in the other departments around you? What are some of the services that you offer businesses when it comes to that, from determining maybe the targeting, maybe some of the marketing and other aspects of it?
Yeah, so in our division, the Research and Innovation Division, I run the Business and Commercialization Innovation Center. These are the types of things we support businesses through, is really that core strategy. And when we're looking at a target market, we do this always after doing our initial market research. So we want to get a pulse on the industry, what's happening in it, market growth indicators, consumer behavior indicators. That's where we're going to start. From there, we would look at our competitors, and then we dive into the consumer behavior analysis deeper to then establish the target market. And this takes weeks. As ALLIE mentioned, it's not something you do in a 2-hour session sitting down. It takes a lot of time and going back and forth.
Yeah, I would imagine actually that this is a much longer process. And you know what? It's probably good to invest the time in it because you're going to see it in the results. You're going to save yourself time at the end. I'm going to go into a bit more specific one, and this is from one of our ALLIE, you wanted to jump in?
Sorry, I just wanted to note something quickly. What Paula noted about competitors is there are actually literally tools that you can go online, plug in your competitors' URLs and find out how much money they're spending on ads, what keywords they're targeting, who they're targeting, what their demographic makeup looks like. It can get that specific. Their paid advertising data, if they're spending anything excessive, I think it's like $4,000 a month, which is most businesses who are playing on TPC. Yeah, you can get like that granular and specific in terms of what your targeting strategy can look like. So you just mentioned, what are your competitors up to? Who are they marketing to? But you can like really know exactly who they're marketing to. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think this is really helpful to everyone who's listening in, is to saying that we have to redefine it from the old-fashioned way of just basic demographics to behavior, and then the tools that we have available to us to actually explore it further. But I want to get to some of the questions that are coming in via the chat. And one of the ones is so a little bit away from what the broad picture and the conversation we've had so far. And this is Sarah's question, and she's asking, what is the best platform for health and safety companies to promote and market their business? And Paula, I'm not sure if you at Niagara College have had any experience with companies that are in the health and safety field, and a field that is critical, I think, to all of our well-being, and it's much desired. What are some of the best platforms?
Well, I'm not sure if this is a B2B company, but I'm guessing it's a B2B company. I think that was Sarah, so Sarah, chime in if I'm wrong there. If it's B2B, chances are your LinkedIn presence is going to need to be very strong, and you're going to need to spend a lot of time on that platform. There's value in having presence on multiple platforms. Even such as Instagram, because other businesses are there, but I wouldn't focus as much time and effort into it. I would focus on the platforms that are built for other businesses to connect if you're in that business to business environment. If you're selling to consumers, that's where I would go towards that consumer facing platforms, which is where you were talking about your Instagrams, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, all of those sorts of things.
Excellent, thank you very much. I'm going to another pain point that businesses face right now, and that has to do with labor shortage. We see it in the headlines everywhere we hear it. We experience it ourselves as we go into a business or take advantage of a service that we maybe have been before and have taken for granted that it was there and open 24 hours a day. So labor shortage is a pain point for many managers and owners. And some experts indicate that technology and automation will close that gap. So when we're looking at marketing, how can a business prepare themselves for such a change? What role does technology there play? Not specifically, but how can it help them when people are saying, I can't attract the right individual to, execute my campaign that I have and that I want to move forward with? ALLIE, what are your thoughts?
So you're asking how businesses could leverage technology to help fill their gaps, or how they can use their technological stacks to create, to make them attractive to employees. Is that what you're asking?
I think when it comes to marketing, I think when we look at the role of automation going forward, I think it's critical in so many facets of it. We look at our interactions with our physicians. It's different than it was in before. And we look at the grocery store and you have your self-checkout. So when people are looking at marketing and saying, like in before, and I had a marketing team of X number of individuals performing these kind of tasks. And now looking forward, is it different? Are we utilizing platforms that maybe are there that assist us in making it easier to execute our marketing strategy?
Yeah, I don't think the size of your marketing department has changed, if I'm honest. I think what they do is different. I think the demand on businesses to be frequent and adept communicators is higher than it's ever been, especially because of the pandemic. And I think the work that marketers are doing is more strategy and creative centric, while the technology is picking up the deployment end of things. So we're able to do so much more with automation tools than we had been able to. Even in the last few years, it felt like the software as a service community really doubled down on creating massive wide swept improvements. That being said, one of the challenges we're seeing, and something that I would caution businesses against, is people have incredibly high tech stacks now. So they have tons of services with wild overlap. As different organizations have increased updates and pushed new features to their services, we see businesses that have like 7 emailing platforms because every one of their old marketing tools has introduced emailing since the pandemic started. So I think that there's a lot of fat to cut in terms of the kinds of technology that businesses are using. But I think repositioning the way you think about marketing and the marketing skill set, what people need to be actually facilitating inside a marketing department, is a really smart thing to do. And like at this moment, we're entering a time where, as we noted before, that notion of connectivity really matters. So instead of having your marketers sit and be scheduling things manually because you want to save on, having a good scheduler in your toolkit, I would say the strength in your marketing team is getting to know the community that you serve, creating community-centric marketing messages, getting rid of a social media manager title and calling them a community manager, like just reframing the way that you treat marketing inside an organization, and also understanding that depending on the size of your organization, marketing is also doing the ambassadorship work for the internal organization communicating as well. So when the marketing is great and it feels good and it feels authentic and people can like sort of grab that by the reins, then that internal ambassadorship starts to grow and that authenticity becomes a lot more natural. That's really for organizations that I would say are probably like 30 plus people in size, when that ambassadorship starts to really matter. So yeah, I don't know that I answered that as directly as you asked it, but those are my thoughts.
Actually, you did answer it actually, because you talked about the role of automation, but at the same time also the role of individuals in the marketing department and how that has changed and how we're redefining it. Paula, at Niagara College, you would always want to be on the leading edge when it comes to the tools that you provide the business community, tools that your students can access. What role has technology and automation played in your world?
Yeah, I think it hasn't replaced people. And I think that's really important in the marketing department. In marketing, we still need the people and we can't automate them. I think what it's allowed us to do is some things more efficiently. As ALLIE mentioned with the target market piece, there's a lot of software that we can use to get insights a lot quicker than we used to. We used to have to spend a lot more time on the research side of things, really heavy, almost academic style research, and tools are making that easier. But at the same time, we're finding that we're going deeper than we ever did before. So we're utilizing that extra time to produce better outcomes. So we take those efficiencies and apply it for better outcomes rather than kind of cramming in more work, I would say, just producing better output.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. ALLIE, there's a question from one of our participants, and it's specific again to a certain market that they're interested in. And the question is, what kind of strategies are there available, or should legal services consider when it comes to marketing?
Good question. I actually work with a lot of lawyers, so I can tell you a little bit about what I know. I work with lawyers as clients. I don't have a lot of lawyers working for me. I guess I should clear that up. Not a very litigious organization. So what we find really effective depends on what kind of law you practice. So a lot of our clients who are in sort of well-rounded firms are doing the full gambit of like strong SEO work, doing a lot of PPC advertising. Law is suddenly a very competitive advertising market. Some laws changed a few years ago. You probably notice a lot more lawyers on billboards as you drive around, starting to look a bit like Buffalo over here. So, you know, it's become a much more competitive marketing landscape. But in general, if you're focused in the corporate space, in employment law, any of those sort of subcategories, we see a lot of success on LinkedIn, especially with LinkedIn advertising. Sort of the pandemic really stopped people from feeling like they have to use a lawyer right in their own backyard. So LinkedIn advertising requires a relatively large population base to permit ads to run in a geographic area. But because lawyers can service their clients from further distance now, we find that LinkedIn advertising has been super, super effective for those subsects of the legal field. And then, you know, family law, personal injury law, wills and estates, real estate law, really like traditional direct-to-consumer channels. So we see lawyers doing really well on TikTok, believe it or not. If you've got some video savvy and a good on-camera personality, that might be your space. Instagram, really effective, even running just like simple Facebook and Instagram advertising. But truly, people do a lot of research when it comes to legal services and lawyers. They are putting a lot of trust in a lawyer, and also it feels like a huge investment for most of the population. So the reality is that Google Ads will probably be your best ROI generator, because people are going to be doubling down on research. They're going to be looking you up in as many sites and review opportunities as they can possibly find before they're booking those consultations. So being where they're looking would be probably my best recommendation, but depending on your field of practice, there's lots of channels that could be helpful for you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Paula, I'm going to pass this on to you, because Niagara College has such a strong television and video production department, has done like some extraordinary work during the Canada Summer Games and with so many other community events at the same time. The question from one of our participants here is related to the creation of video content. And the question is, how do you suggest making strides with video content without investing in high production costs? And I can see that because we're looking at Canada-wide, we're looking Niagara-wide, and we have a lot of smaller organizations with possibly less than 10 individuals, less than 100, most definitely. So with the changes when it comes to video content production and high quality one, not even sure if one needs to seek out high quality, but what is the best way to move forward?
Yeah, this is hard, right? Because we're seeing the rise of video content and it taking kind of top spot, but it tends to be the most expensive to produce. So when we're speaking to small businesses, that can feel overwhelming. The reality is most of us have the tools we need in our hand all the time. It's amazing what an iPhone can do. I'm an iPhone user. I'm sure Android is similar, or some would argue better. And the tools that exist right in the phone to edit video. I think just utilizing those and getting started. I've often told people, just start making videos with no intention to post them. Just begin to get comfortable and speak to those in your organization to see if someone has that skill set and there's a way to expand their role as well. Because there are a lot of people coming into the workforce with this talent inherently in them. And I think there's a way to utilize that. So I don't think a ton of fancy equipment needs to be purchased. I mean, if you're producing a commercial, then yes, going to an agency who specializes in that would be important. But if you're talking about like short video content, which you're going to use for various social platforms, your phone is going to be more than capable to do all of that work for you. And I just want to expand a little bit, because I know on One Piece, a lot of people with video content they're terrified of it. The thought, ALLIE said, if you have a good personality, get and go in front of the screen. A lot of people don't want to do that. And I can very much appreciate that as someone who loves to be behind the scenes. But the way video content's being created, it doesn't have to be your face. There's so many unique ways. So I think getting involved in watching the type of content that's out there, and then just experimenting on your own, and just trust in your phone and the apps you can use on it.
That's an excellent point that you're making. Actually, I loved your suggestion to just do it while you're not, with no intentions of posting it, to just get used to it. Because I think for a lot of individuals, it's likely that they can't find their own voice in it. You know, like we're put in a different environment. And I think it's different if we do it at a Thanksgiving party or at home or with our kids. Then we actually look at the thought, this is my brand, this is my company, these are my colleagues, and the interactions that come from there. I'm conscious that we only have 10 minutes left, and I would like to get to another question that has come forward. What are the most important elements to consider during the changing environment? With it, I'm not sure if there's a recession that is looming. Some economists are saying that that is the case, but what we really can say is that costs have risen, there's uncertainty, economic uncertainty that we're facing. So what are some of the important elements that business that have gone through a significant amount for the last 2.5 years, for them to be prepared with what likely some economists are saying, if there is a recession, it will be a short-term recession, it's not a long drawn-out one, but it always impacts businesses. ALLIE, what are some of the ways when it comes to marketing and communication that business can be prepared?
Right now, our focus with our clients is doubling down on really heavily servicing their biggest fans, their strongest supporters, ensuring that the community is tight and reliable. So ensuring that there will be revenue when this recession hits is sort of our best and first line of defense in the marketing world. The other thing, and this is maybe more of a business suggestion, but certainly influences marketing, is to have as many revenue streams open in your business as possible. So if the pandemic wasn't enough to get you online, servicing your clients through e-commerce or through Zoom-based consulting or whatever it is, like, the time is now. It is right now. And I often kind of lean on this idea where, you know, when there's resistance to opening up those additional channels, or there's a million reasons why it won't work despite it working for millions of businesses all over the world, is this concept of like a strategic decision. So that just feels like a big strategic decision for a lot of businesses. But I would encourage you to also consider how big the strategic decision to not do it is. So that would be my best advice, is to bust open as many streams of revenue as you possibly can, and to double down on serving your biggest fans, so that you have loyal and reliable revenue during hard times.
Excellent. Another question that has come forward, Paula, by moving this towards you, is looking at what are some of the best apps for marketing teams right now that you're saying they must have for every organization to consider, to be part of? Are there some specific ones that you would say we recommend, and we have seen that they're extremely helpful to organizations?
So for us, I would say Canva is very helpful to support your marketing activities. It does not replace an agency, and I think that's really important. You need your good collateral from an agency, but utilizing something like Canva for those in-between things, and also developing pieces like pitch decks, especially if you're in a B2B space. There's a lot you can do there that's very affordable. If you're a new business starting out, and cash is very tight, getting familiar with something like Canva will support the media collateral until you can get to a point where you can afford agency and pass that off onto somebody else. I would say that is the main one right now that we're utilizing.
Oh, that makes sense. And when it comes to video content, video production, social media bookings and others, any other suggestions?
I think ALLIE's probably going to be best to answer this. I mean, we do everything very much in the platform, but I know ALLIE has a lot more experience with HubSpot and could probably speak to that better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you were asking about like tools that we can best utilize to make things more efficient. I mean, HubSpot's amazing. It's a little bit expensive if you want to go big, but there is incredible entry-level components that just create levels of efficiency in business and are such a soft introduction to the concept of automating elements of your business that like I cannot sing its praises enough. They've got a lot of competitors in the marketplace, some of them industry specific. HubSpot, I think, fits for most. It doesn't fit for all. So there's other really phenomenal channels. We have a lot of clients who really like things like Active Demand, who like MailChimp. I mean, there's a lot of different platforms that are creating a lot of efficiency. I would also say having a great social scheduling tool. If you're not on a higher level of sort of a regular marketing automation tool, you probably don't have awesome social scheduling in it. Having a good social scheduling tool that permits really easy data collection is really helpful. And often those also bake in advertising. So using ads platforms, I mean, Facebook's platform changes what feels like every 3 weeks. They are constantly moving things. Buttons are in different places. It's complicated. So a lot of people have made a business of making that simple. A lot of those social scheduling tools have those elements baked in, which I think is really helpful. And then Google Ads can just feel overwhelming, but it is so wildly effective. So that would be another space. Another thing that I would say, and I'm not sure that this is on this question, but just like here's some advice, is text messaging is it right now. So in large organizations that are seeing major wins with their digital revenue streams, text messaging is where that's coming from. You need a text messaging platform. If you're running a Black Friday, Cyber Monday campaign, if you're going to run a Boxing Day campaign, if you're going to do a good run up to the holidays, especially if you're in a consumer facing business, you need text messaging. It's where the best results are coming from. It's the best bang for your buck in the market right now. And it's where we're seeing a lot of clients turn to guarantee like attention on their advertising. We hear a lot of complaints about algorithms, about email sorting. Gmail's got everything segmented into these separate folders so nobody sees it. And nobody sees me on Facebook anymore. The algorithm changes in all of these spaces are a direct result of the fact that it's noisy out there. And so those platforms are also trying to survive. They're cleaning stuff up so that people aren't getting so frustrated digging through content that they're no longer a relevant platform. So keep that in mind when you see these algorithm changes and when you see a net new strategy that enters the market with such a splash like text messaging, that's where you should double down. I think it's really important. Also, you own your email list, so email is really important too.
Yeah, I agree with you there. One last question. We have 2-3 minutes to go, and this is an interesting one. Is that business try to stay on top of everything, on the leading edge, and you being two experts when it comes to marketing. Who are your gurus? What are kind of like some of the podcasts that you turn to, or the experts that you follow to saying that, you know what, here is where I get my information, or this is what is really thrilling for me to seeing how our industry is changing. And ALLIE, if I start off with you and then I'll pass it on to you, Paula, just before we wrap it up.
Sure. I really enjoy the content of the Marketing Millennials. I get the DTC newsletter. I follow a lot of people online. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I won't give you an exhaustive list, but I have a list on our blog, so you can always go there and take a look at like the oodles and oodles of things I'm consuming all the time. I also belong to an agency owner mastermind. And if you're not currently bumping heads with people who are in similar positions to you, I highly encourage it, because you are all consuming different things and then bringing those ideas to the table and chatting about it. That is where I would say I learn the most. It's where I get checked the most. It's where I get brought down to earth the most. So, you know, I think it's just a really healthy space to do a lot of learning and a lot of thinking. And if you're in a space of people who are working in a similar field to you, a lot of the things that are influencing their behavior and their real-time results are the conversation that you're privy to. So that would be, I think, my best learning happens in that space, but I am constantly consuming to make sure that the advice I'm giving is sound, responsible, and effective.
I think you're making an excellent point. We belong naturally, and all of our members belong to the Ontario and the Canadian Chambers of Commerce. and I sit on the Ontario Chamber Executive Board as well, just for that interaction, that industry knowledge that you need to have to actually advance your own organization. That's an excellent point. Paula, any favorite ones that you follow or would recommend?
I mean, I think for everybody, whatever you're operating in, subscribe to newsletters that are giving you advice in that area. Food marketing is definitely my passion. So Food Dive is a big one for me. I can get those insights daily. For just marketing inspiration and having a appreciation for the space, the Under the Influence podcast by Terry O'Reilly at CBC is absolutely fantastic. And you will learn so much about marketing, but the greater strategy of a business and even the advertising components. And it's highly entertaining. So I suggest everyone goes and listens to that one.
Well, and on that note, I think it's a perfect way for us to wrap up today's webinar. Both of you have been inspiring. Both of you have brought forward an extraordinary amount of tools and suggestions. I think that have been extremely and will be extremely helpful to businesses moving forward. So our thanks go specifically to Niagara College for powering this hour that we had. Paula, thank you very much. ALLIE, as always, it has been a pleasure. And to our participants, I just want to say thank you so very much for being with us over this past hour. I'm seeing in the chat a couple of really good positive feedback that we're getting and saying that it has been very helpful. I most definitely feel the same. And then we're hoping and we're planning to get this podcast out to a greater group of people through our social media channels, email lists, daily updates in different ways. Thank you very much for being part of it. And please always check us out at gncc.ca. And to everyone, as we're getting close to Thanksgiving, I wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Thank you.